Hey there, I'm Frankie B. Proper videos for this channel take a while to make, most of which is spent deciphering the very thick accents of people who make editing tutorials. So in order to have something with a faster turnaround to appease the algorithm, here's Frankenbeans, a means to redress the semi-current topics of the day and to blather on about tangents. In 2 weeks ago's news, Warner Brothers closed several of its game studios, among them Monolith. As you might be able to tell, I really like f.e.a.r. While it's a shame that such a venerable studio has been shuttered, I've seen some really stupid takes on the whole situation, like namely that this is more proof positive that the games industry is teetering on the edge of collapse. Which is fiction. The industry is fine. It's not the popular opinion at all, I know, but reality is increasingly unpopular. Here's Warner Brothers stock. This is really what inspired me to go on this tangent. I heard someone talking about this dip right here between the 3rd and the 4th of March, who insisted that this meant that the company was about to collapse, and that gamers were having their vengeance. In a way, think of this video as a plea from me. Do not use single day or single week stock price shifts to gauge a company's overall health. Don't listen to people who do that. It's not hard to read a stock. Here's WB's monthly metrics, which are solid. Year to date, not as good, but if you go back a year, seems like Warner Brothers is chugging along. When I go out to 5 years or to its max, I can see that the company seems to be having trouble finding its post-pandemic footing, but that's not close to collapse. Obsidian, Bethesda, and Arcane have all had a pretty rough time of it in the last year. I mean, Avowed, kind of mixed success, Star Todd, and of course Redfall. Everyone has kind of forgotten about that. We might expect to see that reflected in Microsoft stock, which has a lot of red, but then you look at the 5-year overview and you can see that Microsoft is doing really, really well. Sony last year dropped Concord, a wet fart that reverberated around the world. $200 million at a minimum just burned, right? But the company is on a tear. Sonic is embarrassing, so it stands to reason that maybe Sega's performance is embarrassing. After all, they almost gave birth to hyenas, remember that? But aborting that particular crocuta seems to have paid off well for the company, which looks to have gotten out of a slippery slope and done great ever since. Now, while it's true that all of these companies are conglomerates, which is to say that their parent companies make more than just games or entertainment, you can see the same trends across plenty of big-name game developers otherwise. BioWare EA has a pretty big dip around their 2025 Q1 earnings call, but when you look at its performance over a year, it's really barely down. You leverage that out to 5, and the volatility of the last few months really doesn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary. The Borderlands movie was an embarrassment almost on the scale of any time Randy Pitchford is recorded on camera, so one might expect to see it clap back on Gearbox, but no, Take-Two Interactive is doing just fine. The new Monster Hunter has a lot of performance issues and is a sterling example of why US-based voice acting is a colossal waste of money. Developers, please stop using US voice actors. But Capcom stock really is not in any trouble. Nintendo is doing ludicrously well, with investors clearly taking a shine to the Switch 2 announcement. Konami is doing just fine despite how incompetently it manages its properties, but in fairness, Japan is old as hell and they are a company that makes pachinko machines. Square Enix is a company that actually paid money for Forspoken, and they've closed a lot of smaller studios, completely reshored their entire business strategy, so you might expect to see them in choppy waters, but they're fine. Now, if you want to see what it looks like when a game studio is actually in trouble, you take a look at Ubisoft. Oh, wait a minute, it's green? Oh, right. That's why looking at short-term stock performance is stupid. This is a company that has no idea what it's doing, and it's desperate to replicate a level of success that, it just clearly does not understand. Just to drive the point home, consider the state of broader tech. Tech layoffs have been in full force for almost a year now, and frankly, I don't think they're stopping anytime soon. So you could be forgiven for thinking that tech is in some trouble, tech is tumbling down, but let's take a look at Meta. The company is doing great, despite the fact that it scrapped the metaverse. Apples are red, and so it is that Apple is red. Tim Cook is cooked. Except if we look at longer-term trends, you can again see short-term is not really that useful. There's not much to say about Alphabet stock except that it's doing well, and I would remind you, this is the company that made Stadia.
Unthink the things you think are things.
Twitter's private, so it's hard to tell if it's doing well. TikTok also is, but they recently did a share buyback, and the result there suggests that the company's valuation is probably around $315 billion. Seems pretty good to me. Seems like tech is doing really well. All of this is to say that companies can eat good and downsize at the same time. Outrage farmers are outraged about this, but investors look to be sanguine about the future of the economy. And this is, of course, why people prefer simple narratives. Why in the world would you need to lay off people when you're doing well? One side says this is just corporate greed. The other side says this is a revenge for betting big on DEI, ESG, so on and so forth. It makes the world so straightforward and so logical and so easy to understand. Whew. Both of the narratives are pretty obviously wrong. Now, the actual reason that you can have layoffs in a bumper year involves talking about interest, debt, inflation, and the pandemic. But that is, frankly, a different can of beans for another time. And if you made it this far, thanks for listening, and see you around, hopefully in a week or two.